KZMB All Zombie Radio.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the season finale episode of the Limited Series Lounge. For real this time, because I'm tired and I don't want to keep doing this. I don't know if we're actually live. That's what I'm trying to check right now. We are. Great. Love that for us. And also my cohort, Takira. I don't know where she is. To be fair, I sent her the link like 3 hours ago. Like 3 hours ago. Because I kind of forgot. I forgot to set up the studio. I don't know. Things happen. It's busy. It's pre-Christmas season. There's a lot going on. My work is insane. Anyway, now I'm on a break from work and I don't have to go back until the new year. And it feels good. It feels good. And also, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about these last 2 episodes of The Devil in Disguise on Peacock. Not to be confused with the documentary of the same name from a couple years prior. This is the docu-series. And honestly, this was... What in the heck? Hold on. Sorry, I had an article pulled up for you and something weird came up. This was a very strong end to a very emotionally heavy show. And I'm happy with how it ended. I thought it was very well done. Now, bear with me, right? Like, this was a dramatization. This is not 100% factual, everything that was presented here. We don't, I like, no one's going to know exactly how everything went down. Okay. The only one who did know is dead. He died at the end of the series. He died in 1994 in real life via lethal injection. So no one's ever going to know. Unfortunately, there are still 6 bodies unaccounted for, and those are just the ones we know of. Detective Tovar has publicly gone on record and has pushed for Cook County to look into potentially other places that Gacy frequented, because there is a concern that there are more victims that we do not know about. It was in fact fought for that people exhumed the beneath his mother's house because she lived fairly close to him, and the thought is that probably he buried bodies there too. It has been exhumed since then, not 100%. I don't think the whole property line has been done. But as of their last findings, there was nothing. This show was very heavy, and I had a really hard time getting through some of the episodes. And we talked last week, to Kira and I, about the fact that it was a hard watch to watch that episode 5 and 6 back to back. So this week, I took a different approach. And Tuesday, I texted Takira and I said, I'm watching episode 7 now, and you should too, so we can get it out of the way. And so I watched episode 7, and then I'm covering Fallout with Squawking Dead, and so I had to take a break from Devil in Disguise and watch Fallout. And then last night I watched episode 8, the majority of it, until I could not stay awake any longer, and I had probably about 10 minutes left, and I finalized that 10 minutes today right before this episode. It was, like I said, it was extremely well done. There is a little bit of confusion, so I just want to remind everybody there that this is fictional. Okay, like, this is based in fact, but it is fictional, and some things have been added on. I was curious to know more about the families being denied access to the public execution, because it seems unreasonably cruel to bus families in to a prison to then force them to sit in a basement and then deny them access to the actual execution. That seems unnecessarily cruel. So I just wanted to look into that because I wasn't sure. and I found some mixed information. So, some information stated that the families were warned ahead of time that they would not be given access to the execution, and they chose to come anyway. Hi, Durga. And they chose to come anyway. And so I don't know if that's true or not. Oh, well, you're here now. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. And I think you only missed one. I think you only missed last week's. You're okay. Um, so I'm unsure. I found a Reddit post in which someone was claiming to be one of the victims' family members and that they were in that basement and that they weren't aware. And that their understanding was so there was a TV placed in the basement. That is true. So they were able to watch the news reports as they were coming in. That part is completely true. From all accounts, from what I can find, that is true. So this person claiming to be a family member stated that they were told that they were going to wait down there until right before the execution and they would be brought up. However, because of the way that the news presented it, like they didn't know when the execution was actually going to happen. And then all of a sudden, someone comes down and says, "Hey, he's dead. It's time to go. Get on the bus." Now, someone came back in those comments and was like, "Why would you pretend to be a family member? Like this is," because that's what I was thinking. Like any Joe Schmo can go on Reddit and claim they were a family member to somebody who passed away from a serial killer. I'm sure people do it all the time. Why? What drives you to do that? I have no idea, but I'm sure it happens all the time. So I that does not surprise me at all. Um, so I don't really know. I don't really know. So I was looking into it and I did find an article. Um, by Yana Grebenuk. Sorry, it's quite a last name. From US Weekly. Um, uh, yeah, from US Weekly. It's on Yahoo Entertainment, so kind of a mess there. This came out Sunday, October 19th, 2025 at 7:30 a.m. Okay. It's entitled Peacock's Devil in Disguise Ending Explained After Look into John Wayne Gacy's Crimes Before Execution. I don't know if this is going to answer our questions, but it seemed to kind of surround this idea, so I just wanted to go through it. Peacock's Devil in Disguise was an eerie glimpse into John Wayne Gacy's crimes and execution, but how did the true crime series wrap up? The scripted series, which premiered on Thursday, October 16th. Oh my goodness. Okay. Durga's Durga says that she knew a guy whose dad was a Dahmer victim. We just knew he was lying. um, um, yeah, it's like I do know someone who is related to someone that was a Dahmer victim. However, same last name. To- totally, there's no way that anybody else had that name. You know what I mean? Like, it's just it is. I know that that person's related, because of the last name, and also because of everything. And he like didn't want to talk about it. That was the thing. This was not a badge of honor for him. This was a horrible mar on his family's history. As well, it would be. And so that's the thing. You're not running around telling everybody about how this happened because you don't want that connection for your family. You'd like anything but that connection for your family at that point. So it's like, when you have these people running around talking about they were related to the victim or whatever, it's kind of like, were you though? Or are you just trying to garner a little bit of sympathy or attention or what? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what drives people, but anyway, I digress. Let me move on. The scripted series, which premiered on Thursday, October 16th, started with a 10-day investigation into the disappearance of teenager Robert Peast, which led to Gacy's arrest in 1978. And from there, Devil in Disguise followed the events that led to his conviction and subsequent execution. In the final scenes, the families of Gacy's victims found out that he had died, but that they weren't allowed to be in an adjoining room to watch it happen. Other key players from the investigation and trial listened to the radio announce Gacy's death before Gabriel Luna's detective Rafael Tovar visited the serial killer's home where dozens of bodies were dug up. Quote. Okay, this is the end of the episode. This is what the text scroll is at the end of the episode. In the years that followed the horrors of 1978, the Chicago Police Department computerized data associated with missing persons so that patterns among cases could be found between districts. The Intergovernmental Missing Child Recovery Act of 1984 eliminated the 72-hour waiting period before law enforcement searched for a missing child and established the Illinois State Enforcement Agencies to Recover Children, or iSearch. The statement highlighted how iSearch was dedicated to locating missing youth in their respective geographical areas, adding that the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has reported that due to technological advances and awareness that fast action saves lives, more than 99% of children reported missing in America in recent years have come home alive. The message continued: while this series is fictionalized, these stories reflect the hopes and vulnerabilities of generations of young people. Today's youth face both similar and unprecedented challenges, including economic instability. I would argue that a lot of these things have not changed, by the way. This is not like some shocking revelation that this documentary came to. This has been a thing. Okay? So, economic instability, education inequality, gun violence, and social media pressures. That's the only new one. It's that last one, and it's not even that new because social media has been around for a while now. We all have a role to play in fostering safe and supportive environments for everyone. Okay, 6 extinguished lives remain unidentified and buried in various Chicago area cemeteries. Each gravestone is inscribed with the words, "We remembered." Um, because obviously they don't know who the victims are, so there's no name to put with them. So that's what they've decided to put on their tombstones. Then they do like a call to action to ask that if you believe that someone that you know was a victim of John Wayne Gacy, that you please come forward to the Cook County Sheriff's Department. During an exclusive interview with Us Weekly, Marin Ireland, who played Robert's mother, Elizabeth Peast, broke down the shot of her character looking at James Badge Dale's Joe Kozenzak after he saw Gacy's execution and she didn't. Quote, I think something very telling is that Patrick McManus, the creator, did not write that as a scene with he did not write that as a scene with dialogue. And in many ways, they've said all they could say to each other over the years. In some ways, what's being communicated is too big for words, Ireland explained. It's very telling that Elizabeth doesn't want to waste any more words on a person that she feels like doesn't have the capacity. She continued, it's a long relationship, and it's like any other deep disappointment with somebody that you shared a long relationship with. It's not entirely his fault, but also, what else can you do but associate that person forever with these feelings? Which I will say, Kozenzak, I don't think Kozenzak is necessarily a bad guy, okay? Do I think that morally Tovar is probably on a different level? Yes, I do. Do I think that Kozenzak took advantage of the situation that he was in? Also, yes, I do. Can I fault him for that? I don't know that I can. I really don't. Why am I asking myself questions over and over again? I don't know. I don't know. Because I don't have anybody to verbally talk to right now. Just talking out loud. Um, I feel again, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened that final day. I'm gonna look it up obviously while we're in this conversation and try to see what happened with this. Because this seems unnecessarily cruel to bust them in to have them not be able to watch the execution. I I was very impacted by Tovar's line to Kozenzak. Because Tovar isn't saying that Kozenzak's a horrible person. That's not what he's saying. But what he is saying to him is that you should go celebrate because you feel like the job is done. Tovar was unable to move on and unable to let go of it and unable to state that the job is done. As far as he's concerned, the job was never completed. Tovar is 100% right. But Kozenzak, it's like, where do you draw the line? You can't hold on to every case for eternity. You got the bad guy. He's gone. He's dead. He can't hurt anybody else. Like where do you draw the line? So I see both sides. I think I tend to side with Tovar, but I think that's easy to say from an outside perspective because I'm not living it. I'm not living it. It would be very hard to live through this. Durga says that it wasn't a badge of honor for him, but we definitely thought he was lying when he did spill. I don't know. Hard to say. Also, it's like it opens up a can of worms because of Dahmer's victims specifically. Like he frequented like gay bars and stuff, so it's like it opens up a kind of like a can of worms. You know what I mean? Like anyway. And yes, thank you, Gabby Mosley, for your work with missing persons. Gacy was a serial killer and sex offender who raped, tortured, and murdered dozens of young men and boys. And after he was convicted of 30, it says 32 here, but it was 33 murders, he was sentenced to death and died by lethal injection in 1994. The limited series made an effort to focus on Gacy's victims, something other shows centered around notorious murders have been chastised for allegedly ignoring. And Devil in Disguise, John Wayne Gacy addressed the trauma inflicted on the victims' families, named each episode after a victim of Gacy's, and questioned investigative missteps and systemic failures that led to Gacy evading the law for so long. All right. I'm going to skip the rest of this because it's not hitting on what I wanted it to hit on. Okay, so unfortunately, Google AI overview is the only thing that I've been able to see. So I'm going to look at the overview and then I'm going to look at an article from 1994. We're going to talk about that. So, this is what AI overview says. Not that it's ever right, but here we go. Yes, the family of John Wayne Gacy's victims were denied the right to witness his execution. The Illinois Department of Corrections cited limited space and security reasons for rejecting their request while allowing law enforcement, prosecutors, and media representatives to attend. You can decide what you feel would have been right. Like, I'm not going to get into like capital punishment as like a thing. I'm not going to get into any of that right now. You can decide what you feel would have been right in this. However, that statement, that line makes me believe that they knew ahead of time that they were going to be denied access, not that it was sprung upon them at the viewing. But again, we'll continue to look into this. Some family members expressed keen interest in attending the execution, hoping it would provide a sense of finality and closure after 14 years of appeals. I forgot what it said. It was like 29 appeals or something. I mean, this guy was like appealing left and right to try to get out. I'm so thankful he didn't. Vito Mazzara, whose 20-year-old brother James was a victim, expressed frustration, stating, quote, "I don't understand why they won't let the victims' families attend. For me, it would lift a burden and give me some kind of self-satisfaction," end quote. Ultimately, the victims' relatives had to wait in a separate room in the prison basement. So this report is the same, where they watched news updates about the execution on a small television set. This is what I'm saying. Like all the reports said the same thing about the television. The controversy surrounding the denial of access, contrasted with the media and officials who were present, highlighted the lack of formal policies in place at the time regarding victim family attendance at executions in Illinois. All right, now the Chicago Tribune. The Tribune published this article. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. No, I can't read it. Oh my gosh. It's behind a paywall. I'm sorry, my friends. It looks like, based on this article in 1994, so far Mazzara was the only Gacy victim survivor to have publicly complained about not being able to witness the execution. Let's see. There's another one on UPI. Let me see if I can find this. This one it's going to let me read, I think. Okay. UPI, which I don't know what this stands for. Not sure. I'll find out in a minute. This is from an archive. This is from May 6th of 1994. Um, the past 14 years have not diminished the anger felt by the families of the 33 young men and boys murdered by John Wayne Gacy. All look forward to Tuesday's scheduled execution with pleasure, although some question the decision by the Illinois Department of Corrections, barring them from witnessing the event. Again, this is all happening before the actual execution. So they were informed. So this was just like a little dramatic flair at the end that's not, it doesn't appear to be true. Quote, he's getting off too easy. Richard's sick, psych, Sisk. I can never get the last name right. I'm so sorry. Whose son was one of Gacy's victims, told UPI Friday. Quote, somebody's been carrying him for 14 years. Look what it's done to all the families. End quote. Gacy was condemned to die in March 1980 for the murders of 33 young men and boys, most of whom were found buried in the crawl space of his suburban Chicago home and in his garage. 4 bodies were pulled from the nearby Des Plaines River. He was initially sentenced to die in June 1980, but has been appealing his sentence ever since. So for 14 years, he was appealing this. A number of last-minute appeals were underway on Friday. Dolores Nieder, whose 19-year-old son, John Mowry, was also among the victims, noted how Gacy tortured his victims, performing what he called a rope trick to strangle them. Quote, God knows. Did he bury them alive? She asked. Losing a child is just so horrible, but losing a child the way my son Johnny died is just terrible. Too much to cope with, end quote. Requests were made to the Illinois Department of Corrections to allow family members to witness the execution. All were rejected on the grounds of a lack of space. Sisk or sick or yeah. Why can I not say this? Psych. I'm sorry, I'm butchering it every time. Said he would like to be there and wishes Gacy would face a more violent form of death than lethal injection, the preferred method in Illinois. I wouldn't even want to talk to him. I just want to hit him in the head with a baseball bat. Fair, sir. Nieder said he does not understand why, she does not understand why the state is providing Gacy with his dinner of choice. No, she said. Give him a piece of stale bread and half a glass of water, and that'll be enough. Earlier this week, Gacy said he wants fried chicken, french fries, strawberries, and a cola, but unconfirmed reports indicated that he changed his dinner order to rock lobster and iguana, of all things. By tradition and because of his fate, we try to grant what he wants, said corrections spokesman Nick Howell, but we really are not obligated to give him anything more than prison grub. And that's the end of the article. So it would appear that the victims did know ahead of time. So that wasn't just a sudden thing. And UPI stands for UPI because I can't find anything else on their website, and their website is like super sketchy looking. Anyway. Durr says, not gonna lie, I would have wanted to push the button, let alone watch him die. You wouldn't have wanted to, or you would. And I thought that was I thought it was interesting for them to bring up this concept of like, there's only one of him, and so it's not like he gets killed for every time. Like this is the thing about this, right? Like it doesn't matter how it's going to go. It doesn't bring your relative back. It doesn't actually give any, like, it gives finality that it's like finally over, but it doesn't make anything right. Does that make sense? It's horrible. The whole thing is horrible. The whole thing is horrible. But all right. So, yeah, and then this was, I guess, after this came out in October, there was a lot of hubbub about like, why weren't the families allowed to see his death? And I would have been so angry. And everyone, and this is why, okay, you would have wanted to push the button. This is why you need to do research when it comes to stuff like this. Like, you can't just take this docuseries at face value. Did this present a very compelling story for the victims? Yes. Is that great? Of course it is. Does it mean that everything that happened in this is 100% factually true? Of course it's not. Of course it's not. It's not. And this is one of these moments. They wanted to give you the resolution between Kozenzak and Elizabeth Peast, and they had to be able to give that to you somehow. Okay? And so they had to give you something. And so this is what they gave you. They changed kind of the narrative of this final execution. I'm not saying that it doesn't make it any less fair, okay? It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair either way. But it was not sprung on them. They knew ahead of time. They were denied access from the get. And it would appear based on what we've found so far. And so, but the show wants to give you this sense of like, we've got to have like one last moment because Elizabeth Peast and Kozenzak are the beginning of the show, so they have to tie them back together again. And what made me even sadder is that Elizabeth Peast's life had kind of fallen apart around her after this, which makes sense. Divorce statistics in families who have lost a child are extremely high, higher than the national average. And so this makes sense that her life kind of fell apart around her. It's unfair that this was the fight that she had to have to get someone to find her son. They found him, and then even in the end, she still can't convince them that she needed to be a part of it. That's horrifically sad. Durga, this was a real downer. This was a real downer. This was very good. This was very good in a world of glorifying serial killers, in a world of feel bad for them, they have mental illness, or in a world of, well, they're people too, and maybe there's a side to their story. This is what it should look like. This is what it should look like. I should feel for their victims. I should feel for their victims' families. The victims are dead. They're gone. They had a horrific last couple moments, and they don't have to deal with it anymore. You know what I mean? But like their families have to trudge on through life knowing what happened to them. And so this is what it should look like for us when we're learning about this. True crime has gotten really glorified in the last couple years. It's become this weird trope that women love true crime and this is what we listen to relax and yada yada. This is like a whole thing now, right? I get that. I'm interested in true crime as well. I often like to listen to these stories because I like to find out more about it. However, this is the route we should be taking. You hear me, Ryan Murphy? This is the route we should be taking. Durga says, I'm sorry, it was a bummer. It's okay. It's okay. Yes, that's why I enjoyed this. I don't feel bad for John, which is contrary to the trends in media. Yeah, it really is. I don't feel bad for John either. I don't feel that final voicemail he leaves on Sam Amarante's on his answering machine. He's still even at the end of this. It's like you got everything you wanted, dude. You got to manipulate people, you got to have power over them. You got to abuse your power with young men. You got to do all sorts of stuff. You had to gallivant around for years doing whatever the hell you wanted. And then at the end, you have the audacity to go back and still wonder why maybe someone wouldn't have liked you or wouldn't have chosen you. It's pathetic. He was pathetic. He was a pathetic man, a pathetic, small-minded man who never got over the fact that his daddy didn't quite love him enough. And that's what I want to be left with. I want to be left with knowing that. The only critique is that they didn't bring up Project Delta or Dean Corll. Yeah, we just talked about that. We just talked about Dean Corll recently. Oh, yeah, with the Project Delta thing. Yeah, we did. Yeah, I know. I think it's because they can't fully tie those things together like 100%. And I mean, even you hear in this docuseries, and they're talking about like there's all the, oh yeah, it was on my Kozenzak's on his book tour. These guys are coming up to him saying like, I had a run-in with Gacy. Like, Tovar's like, Gacy was active in Illinois, Kentucky, Wisconsin, and somewhere else, right? Like, he's active in Michigan, maybe? I don't remember. But in several states. There were most likely other victims, unfortunately. And there probably were ties to other people. This did appear to have some sort of child trafficking kind of ring to it. And unfortunately, we may never find out what happened here. We never find out what happened here. And I often say, like, so this is weird. This is like a weird thing, but I often say that there's like questions that I'm saving for when I get to heaven, which is like crazy because like what, like I'm gonna be in heaven, I'm gonna be dead. I'm not really gonna care about any of this stuff anyway. But one of them has always been what actually happened to John Benet Ramsey. It's one of my questions. One of my questions here is gonna be, how many victims were there? Who are they? Who are they? There says so many more victims. I think it's also connected to the Atlanta child murders. Which, oh, if you watch Mindhunter, whew, woohoo, doozy. Which I had heard they're bringing Mindhunter back. Is that right? Mindhunter. Is that true? Oh, now it says it's officially not happening. Well, way to play with me 3 months ago. Yeah. I don't know. I think, yeah, yeah, I know. I heard a rumor recently that like there was going to be, it looks like over the summer, there was kind of like some people saying like, maybe. It doesn't appear. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But that's another really well done one because it's so strongly based on the actual interviews that occurred, that you can go back and listen to. And they're not, I mean, like, do the killers some sort, like the actors who play the killers, do they have some sort of charismatic aspect to them on occasion? Of course. Of course they do. But that was, so did the killers. You know what I mean? Like that's what people say. That's what people always say. I mean, like, y'all lying if you say Ted Bundy is attractive and Jeffrey Dahmer was attractive because they were both fugly. But I mean, people will say like, "Oh yeah, they were really charismatic. Like people were drawn to them." It's part of the whole thing. It's how they're sociopaths. They're able to convince people that like you want to be around them. Gacy had a lot of well-connected friends. Like he was capable of convincing people that he was worth talking to, that he was worth being around. It doesn't make him any less pathetic. He's super pathetic. He's a total loser. I don't care that you met the first lady. You're a loser, dude. You were a total loser. But it's just interesting. It's just interesting. What is this? Okay, wait. Collider wrote an article that says Netflix just released a spiritual season to Mindhunter, except it's horrible. Oh, well, what is it? No. This is not what I wanted to know. This was written by Mauricio Cueto in October of this year. And he said, in an unsurprising turn of events, Ryan Murphy's Monster, the Ed Gein story, was released to a dismal critical reception. The third season of Monster series not only perpetuates a troubling victim exploiting narrative, but thank you, amen, Mauricio. But it also adds details and storylines that have no factual grounds. Charlie Hunnam's turn as the titular serial killer is an overstretched killing extravaganza that sends all the wrong messages. And as if this weren't enough, the series also showcases a pair of detectives who became recognizable thanks to one of Netflix's best series, Mindhunter. So the final episode of Monster, the Ed Gein story, I'm never going to watch it, so this is why we're going to read this, shifts its narrative to focus on FBI agents John Douglas, played by Caleb Ruminer, and Robert Ressler, played by Sean Kerrigan. This real life pair, so these were real people, by the way. That's why I say, like, you can go back and find interviews from them. This real life pair was the inspiration to construct Mindhunter's main characters, Jonathan Groff's Holden Ford and Holt McCallany's Bill Tench. The quasi connection to the Netflix original reopens the scar of this far superior show, never making its triumphant return for a third season. In spirit, this might be reinterpreted as an unofficial Mindhunter season 3. That is, if you're able to overlook how horrible all of it is. Thanks, Mauricio. And then it launches into why Mindhunter is better. Because it is. So Mindhunter is actually based on a novel, by the way. It's entitled Mindhunter Inside the FBI's Elite Serial Crime Unit. Just so you know, it is a book. And upon reading the book, Charlize Theron contacted David Fincher to bring it to life as a TV series. So that's how that got started. Worth watching if you haven't watched it already. It's great. Unfortunately, it ends on kind of a cliffhanger, but yeah. So I want to go through and I feel it would be appropriate to read off the victims' names. I would like to do that really quickly. And so I'm going to do that. Give me one moment. John. Okay. Oh, interesting. The Cook County Sheriff's website is now stating that there are only 5 victims of Gacy that remain unidentified. So that's interesting because I thought it said there were 6. It should not be this hard to find a list of victims, dude. They're the important ones in this. There we go. Yikes. Okay. This is by date of murder, as far as we know. Timothy Jack McCoy, John Butkovich, Daryl Julius Sampson, Randall Wayne Reffett, Samuel G. Dodd Stapleton, Michael Lawrence Bonin, William Huey Carroll Jr., James Byron Hawkinson, Rick Lewis Johnston, Kenneth Ray Parker, Michael M. Marino, William George Bundy, Francis Wayne Alexander, Gregory John Godzik, John Allen Syke or Sick, John Stephen Prestige, Matthew Walter Bowman, Robert Edward Gilroy Jr., John Anthony Mowry, Russell Lloyd Nelson, Robert David Winch, Tommy Joseph Bowling, David Paul Talsma, William Wayne Kindred, Timothy David O'Rourke, Frank William Landingen, James Maraza, and Robert Jerome Peast. Oh, man. Durga says, one of the things that I loved about the show is it also didn't rely on the murders. We didn't see every painful detail. They gave us one episode and allowed us to fill in the blanks everywhere else. The victims didn't feel exploited for the sake of the show. That's, that is one thing I really liked about this. They really did just, yeah, It was well done. It was just very well done. It just felt more sensitive than anything that we've seen before because we've seen a lot of like really a lot of stuff like Monster. Um okay, so there are 5 victims that have never been identified, and based on Gacy's confession, the location of the victims buried in the crawl space, the forensic analysis, police determined that most likely dates for when these are the most likely dates for when these people were killed. So January 3rd, 1972 through July 31st, 1975, body 28, found in the backyard, male aged 14 to 18. June 13th through August 6th of 1976, body 26, crawl space, male aged 23 to 30. August 6th through October 5th, 1976, body 13, crawl space, male aged 17 to 22. August 6th through October 24th, 1976, body 21, crawl space, male aged 15 to 24. March 15th through July 5th, 1977, body 10, crawl space, male aged 17 to 21. In late 1978, forensic expert Betty Pat Gatliff used the skulls of the remaining unidentified victims to create facial reconstructions. So they did try to do that. Now, granted, this was back in 1979. I imagine they'd be much more successful if they tried it again now. Um, okay. They were released to the media in 1980, these facial reconstructions. They're, super awkward looking because again, this was done like with like early technology. Okay. And there were originally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There were originally 9 listed as unidentified. And body 5 was originally, it was later identified as Francis Alexander. Body 9 was later identified as Timothy McCoy. Body 24 was later identified as James Hawkinson. And body 19 was later identified as William Bundy. So it's just those bodies 21, 28, 13, 26, and 10 that are remaining. In October 2011, Cook County Sheriff Thomas Dart announced that investigators, having obtained DNA profiles from the unidentified victims, were to renew their efforts to identify them. And at a press conference, Sheriff Dart stated investigators were seeking DNA samples from across the United States related to any male missing between 1970 and 1979. To date, the identification of 3 victims has been confirmed. Numerous other missing youths have been ruled out as being victims of Gacy. And 4 unrelated cold cases dating between 1972 and 1979 have been solved. Updated facial reconstructions of bodies 10 and 13 were re-released in 2018. Now, in November 2011, William Bundy was identified through DNA testing, and shortly after Gacy's arrest, Bundy's family had contacted his dentist in hopes of submitting his dental records for comparison with the unidentified bodies. But the records have been destroyed after his dentist had retired. And in July 2017, 16-year-old James Hawkinson was identified using DNA testing, and Francis Wayne Alexander was identified via forensic genealogy in October 2021, which I believe is like when they look into like the DNA of your relatives to try to place who you are, I think. Okay, here we go. It is the emerging practice of utilizing genetic information from direct to consumer companies. Oh, this is like, okay, that's super interesting. Okay, so okay, direct to consumer companies for identifying suspects or victims in criminal cases. As of December 2023, the use of this technology has solved a total of 651 criminal cases, including 318 individual perpetrators who were brought to light. There have also been 464 decedents identified, as well as 4 living does. The investigative power of genetic genealogy revolves around the use of publicly accessible genealogy databases such as GED Match and Family Tree DNA. On GED Match, users are able to upload their genetic data from any direct to consumer company in an effort to identify relatives that have tested at companies other than their own. So, I'm assuming this is like you used Ancestry and you want to find out if someone did 23andMe and is related to you, like if you have like a lost sibling or something. I assume that's what this means. Identifying unknown subjects. Get out of here. Through investigative genetic genealogy is done through the use of analysis of identity by descent segments of DNA that indicate shared ancestors. Data available in GED Match, which is composed of genetic profiles from approximately 1.2 million individuals, has proven capable of identifying a third cousin or closer in over 90% of the population. This information, used in tandem with demographic identifiers like age, gender, and place of residence, is sufficient for identifying any person who has a third cousin or closer within a publicly accessible genetic genealogy database. This is a really interesting concept. That's super interesting. Okay. So, and that was done in 2021. So that was fairly recently. In 2012, the DNA of Gacy and other executed Illinois inmates were entered into a national DNA database in efforts to establish potential forensic links to further unsolved mysteries or murders. Um, At the time of Gacy's arrest, he had claimed to investigators that the total number of murder victims could be as high as 45. However, only 33 victims were ever linked to Gacy, and investigators excavated the grounds of his property until they had exposed the substratum of clay beneath the foundations, and that's where they had found the 29 bodies. And shortly after his arrest, Gacy informed investigators that after he had assaulted and then released Jeffrey Rignall in March 1978, he began to throw his murder victims into the Des Plaines River. And he confessed to having disposed of 5 bodies in this manner. However, only 4 bodies were recovered and linked to him. When asked whether there were more victims, Gacy stated, "That's for you guys to find out." Schmuck. Disputed DNA and dental tests conducted between 2012 and 2016 indicate that neither body found in the common grave in Gacy's crawl space and identified as those of Kenneth Parker and Michael Marino in 1980 was actually Marino. Marino's mother had always doubted her son's identification because the clothing found on body 14 was inconsistent with what he had worn when she had last seen him. DNA testing conducted on the exhumed body of Parker has proven that Marino's body had not been mistaken for his. And in addition, the dental x ray conducted on the victim, identified as Michael Marino, had revealed he had all of his second molars, and a dental x ray conducted on Marino in 1976 revealed one molar had not erupted. The original identification of the body had been disputed because the exhumed body had neither an upper nor lower jawbone. Nonetheless, the orthodontist who had identified Marino's remains has stated his conviction in the accuracy of his findings. That doesn't make any sense to me, but okay. On May 23rd, 1978, 25-year-old Charles Antonio Hatula was found drowned in the Pecatonica River near Freeport, Illinois, and he had been missing since May 13th. So for 10 days. Hatula was an employee of PDM and had been linked to the initial investigation of Gacy after Michael Rossi informed investigators of both Godzik's disappearance and Hatula's death. Moreover, Rossi had stated that Hatula was known to have conflicts with Gacy, and when he had, quote, failed to show up to work, Gacy had informed him and several other employees that he had drowned. At the time of Hatula's death, no more bodies could be stored in Gacy's crawl space, which leaves a possibility that he had disposed of the body in the Pecatonica River. However, Des Plaines authorities had contacted Freeport during the investigation of Gacy and were told on December 27th that Hatula had fallen to his death from a bridge while attempting to free a stranded vehicle, and that until his death had been officially ruled as asphyxiation by drowning. Retired Chicago police officer Bill Dorsch stated he had reason to believe there might be more victims buried in the grounds of an apartment building on West Miami Avenue in Chicago, where Gacy had been the caretaker for several years. And in 1975, Dorsch, then a Chicago police officer, observed Gacy. We read this last week, that he had seen him with a shovel like early in the morning, and that Dorsch did confront him. Gacy said he was doing work and that he was too busy. He was too busy to do it during the day. Dorsch also said that several other residents of West Miami Avenue stated that they had seen Gacy digging trenches at the property in the early to mid 1970s. And Gacy was still married at that point to Carol Hoff. In March 2012, the Cook County Sheriff's officials submitted a request to excavate the grounds of this property. And the Cook County State Attorney denied the request, citing a lack of probable cause, including the results of a 1998 search of the property. However, the sheriff's office noted that in 1998, a radar survey suggested 14 areas of interest within the grounds, yet only 2 of these had been excavated. 4 of those remaining were described as being staggeringly suggestive of human skeletons. A second request to excavate the grounds was granted in January 2013, and a search of the property was conducted in the spring, and both sniffer dogs and ground penetrating radar equipment were used, but no human remains were found, unfortunately. Well, probably fortunately, actually. Um, yeah, and this doesn't even go into the thing about his mom's property either. So this has been a thing. They've looked several different places for different victims, unknown victims of Gacy. I don't have much else to say about this, honestly. Like I said, extremely well done. Durga, thank you for the suggestion. It was heavy, but it was worth watching. I'm glad that I did watch this, so thank you for that. I didn't know much about Gacy prior to this. I only know what everybody always said about him. Excuse me. Which is that he was a killer clown. And honestly, it's not even remotely part of this story. That's not even like 3% of the story. This story is much more than that. But I appreciate you bringing it to us. And I wish that Takira could have been here because otherwise she watched those episodes and she didn't even get to talk about them. Now, we will not be back next week. We will not be back the week after. We will not be back until, hold on, January 9th. January 9th. Oh, no, that's not going to work, actually. Shoot, that's why I felt like that date sounded weird. Okay, so Limited Series Lounge is over. Sorry, hold on. Is over for the time being. We're probably not coming back to that until summer. You're lucky if I'm coming back at all. So I'm gonna have a baby. However, January 6th is when the new episode of High Potential comes out. And so I will be covering that. Now, I'm just now realizing that January 9th, I do have a work party that I cannot miss. And so I'm thinking maybe the 10th. Maybe we'll do a Saturday morning. I don't know. Saturday morning, maybe. Just keep an eye out. Keep an eye out on the community posts. I'll write about it. I'll try to get that posted earlier in the week of that week, that first week of full week of January, so you guys know when it's going to be. But yeah, we'll go back to High Potential and we'll go back to that until I can't do this anymore and I'm literally giving birth and and then I don't know what'll happen. Then we'll just have to see. So, yeah, I look forward to it. I'll miss you guys for a couple weeks, but I'm really thankful for the break. I could really use it. I have a lot to get done, including, like setting up a nursery and all sorts of stuff. This baby's due not that long from now. This baby's due very, very, very beginning of March. So we've got a lot to get done in a short period of time here. Thank you again, Durga, for being here. Thank you for being here. There are other people watching, so thank you other people for being here as well. you're free to comment at any time. I'll read it out loud. But thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I love you so, 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 so much. You are sweet, perfect angel babies. And I can't wait to see you in January. And I'm sorry I don't have details for the exact date or time. I apologize, but we'll be back together for High Potential. And that will be a much needed moment of levity from the seriousness of this show. So, all right, I will see you guys in January. I look forward to seeing you then. I hope you have a great holiday season, whatever you're celebrating. Merry Christmas to those who celebrate Christmas. Happy Hanukkah to those who celebrate Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa to those who celebrate Kwanzaa, and et cetera, and et cetera, and et cetera. But I hope you have a great holiday season. And Happy New Year. And I will see you guys when we get back. I'll see you next year.